Chapter 6. It was early the next morning. Arnold was eating breakfast alone in the dining room. His mind felt empty, as if he had no other thoughts besides eating. It wasn't a dream after all. He had gone to sleep but woke up in Arnold's body again. His first day as Arnold had already passed by, but he was already tired of what awaited him in the future. Not just the main storyline. There was the worry if there were other players in this world. The thing he was worried about was whether they would be friendly or not. A person with the knowledge of the future could do whatever they wanted. If they decided to kill lots of people, then few would be able to stop them. Players differed from the non-playable characters in this world. If a player at the level cap were to go on a rampage, then only a 9th-star powerhouse could stop them. Arnold was no match for such a person at his level. It would be a different story if he could gain his original magic items and his beloved battleship. I wonder if I can use magic, he thought as he looked at his hand. It was thick and hard, which was fit for a swordsman. Being a swordsman, not many were suitable to use magic as well. Magic swordsmen were rare. The only reason he wanted to learn magic was because the majority of the items on the ship, and the ship itself, needed magic to work. That was something he didn't have. If he ever found his beloved battleship, then there would be no way for him to use it. There was also no way he'd let others use it. It was much too precious. While Arnold was eating mechanically under the gazes of the servants, another person entered the room. It was Luke. He was wearing a nice shirt and a pair of shorts. It was embroidered with expensive materials. Looking at the crest sewn into the left side of his chest, the shirt was made by one of the household's tailors. The crest was in the shape of the Berkley family, a golden lion's head. He looked like any other noble boy in the attire he was wearing. "Morning, big brother." Arnold almost choked on his food. What did you call me? Big brother? Luke tilted his head at Arnold's reaction. It was one of pure innocence and confusion. The servants who were present found it hard to hold in their laughter. "Why are you calling me that?" Arnold frowned in displeasure. It just didn't sit right with him that Luke called him big brother. But last night you said, it's a big brother's responsibility to buy the little brother his first weapon. That doesn't mean I am your brother now. Arnold rubbed his forehead. Just sit. I'll explain where we're going. Where's Lauran? She's waiting for us outside by the cherry tree on top of the hill. She still goes there. Huh. That was the place she always goes to whenever she was sad or unhappy. It was a place where she could clear her mind. Looking over the city from that hill gave her a different sense of peace. Did she inform you of what I told her last night? That she'll become my personal maid? Then yes. Miss Lauran didn't seem very happy about something. She just told me about Big Brother's words before leaving the room. Luke had a worried expression on his face. Norn tried to ask her what was wrong, but she didn't budge. Forget about her. She must be having that time of the month. Arnold shrugged. Oh. A maid arrived to bring Luke his food. Arnold continued speaking as Luke began eating. Our first stop will be the auction house. The bidding starts early at 7 sharp. And Luke, Arnold bent forward, no matter what you see, turn a blind eye. Luke didn't understand what he meant. They don't just sell items and weapons. Humans are also a type of product in society. Luke stiffened. Surprised? The world isn't full of rainbows and butterflies as you think it is. Anyone can become a slave, be it failing to pay a debt, committing a crime, or being an enemy soldier. All those people ultimately end up as a slave. They will forever repent for how they have sinned. But isn't there a way to stop this? This is technically our city, right? Arnold shook his head. If I or my father acted, then the lives of the regular citizens would be in danger. We would be forced to allow the criminals to continue their activities again. That's horrible. Luke clenched his fists. Moving on. You've heard from father that you'll get married to Princess Olivia, right? Why, yeah. Is this necessary? Luke averted his eyes. He couldn't just marry someone he didn't love. It felt wrong. We can unite the imperial family with ours that way. Although you are an outsider, you must still marry Olivia since you are the heir. Arnold said calmly. This was the woman original Arnold was obsessed with. Everyone in this house knew how much he loved her. Yet he was calmly giving her away? The servants were uneasy if that was really the case. Just yesterday he was threatening to kill a servant due to his anger. That anger was caused by the one he loved. She's expected to visit us in about a week, assuming she received the letter that my father sent her. Arnold drank the juice next his plate. The original Arnold was a heavy drinker despite being 17, but the current Arnold didn't like the taste of alcohol. The servants had picked up on this, including the one who knew him the best, Victoria. She was standing behind him and watching his every movement. I heard that Big Brother loves Her Highness. Is this really okay? Even if it will benefit Mr. Marcus, Luke was still uncertain if it was a good idea to continue with this situation. Luke. Arnold put down his cutlery and looked at Luke. I do indeed love her, even to this day. However, this is something I must bury deep within the depths of my soul. For the greater good. He leaned back in his chair and picked his teeth with a toothpick. As I am now, I'm not worthy of her being my wife. Only the heir of the Berkley family is worthy. What can I do? Sure, I can indulge myself with every woman in this empire I can find. But to me, she remains a special page in my memory book. Unless I can become someone worthy of a woman of her caliber, I must stand down. Everyone present in the room looked at him in silence. One or two looked at Arnold with hearts in their eyes. Others were just shocked. They thought Arnold only loved Olivia for her beauty and body. They were wrong. He was like the definition of what a man in love should be. He's so bold. And look at me, I can't even confess to Norn about how I feel. He thought that maybe it was because Arnold was more mature. So try your best to make her fall for you. Guys like me are probably not her type. Liam chuckled at the thought of the licking dog Arnold was. You better treat her right, otherwise I'll beat you up. Haha, Luke laughed nervously. He's joking, right? He looked at the servants in the living room. They seemed to know what he was thinking of and shook their heads. I'm toast. Has everything been prepared? Victoria looked at Lauran, who was walking next to her. She had gone to fetch Lauran since it was time for them to go. Unlike Lauran, Victoria wasn't wearing her uniform. She was wearing casual clothes. It was a white sundress and a white hat. It blended perfectly with her brown hair and physique. Yes, Lady Victoria. Lauran nodded seriously. You remembered to contact the auction house beforehand to inform them of AL's arrival, right? I have. Have you checked that the coachmen and escorts are legitimate? Yes. Only then did Victoria smile. Good. Don't screw anything up. 2 very important members of this household will be in your hands alone. Yeah? You're not coming with? No. I have to go to Whiteage City to finish everything on that end. I can't let her walk into a messy office, now can I? Lauran looked towards the carriage. Arnold was busy talking to Luke about how he must behave as the heir of the household. It was pretty ironic as he had never followed the same advice. I will make sure everything goes smoothly, Lady Victoria. Good. Here. Advance payment. Victoria put 3 gold coins in Lauran's hands. Isn't this too much? It was literally 3 times more than what she received monthly. This is your salary from now on. Since I am in charge of AL's finances, he told me I can increase your salary. Victoria walked past Lauran. Remember, if I hear you messed up, then punishment awaits. This will impact how the Lord views me as well. I cannot let my juniors make mistakes. With that, she left after climbing on another carriage that headed in a different direction. Lauran looked at the money in her hands. It was an amount she hadn't received before. My position didn't change. I'm still serving the heir, so why was I given a raise? She walked over to Arnold and Luke while thinking that. Miss Lauran, we're just about to leave. Are you ready? Luke asked when she approached them. Yes, she answered while looking at Arnold. The latter seemed oblivious to this and was busy looking into a mirror. Typical perfectionist. Not a speck of dust must be on his suit. The 3 of them boarded the carriage a moment later. As it was etiquette, Lauran was the last to enter. She closed the door and the curtains. After sitting down, she silently observed the 2. They looked like the ordinary duo of younger and older brother. Arnold was the smart, reliable older brother while Luke was the naive, kid brother. Miss Lauran, are you okay? Luke spoke to her while she was absorbed in her thoughts. HM? Ah, yes. I am fine, young Master Luke. His face was right in front of her. There was worry evident on his face. I heard that you couldn't sleep last night. Was something bothering you? Luke had heard from the night shift maids that Lauran was up all night. She was apparently in the library. When they found her, she was asleep with her head on top of a magic book. She must have only slept for an hour before she had to get up again to prepare for their departure. Why is he sticking his nose in my business? No, nothing is bothering me, young master. Lauran answered appropriately. Oh, remember to get lots of sleep. Miss Claudia says that you won't grow that way. Who's Claudia? Arnold asked. Oh, that's Norn's mother. Since I'm living with them, I refer to her as Miss. Speaking of that little demon with auburn hair, where is she? Arnold was still pissed about what she did. She left this morning. She heard that her mother and sister came to do some shopping in the city, so she headed to where her mother was. Is that so? Arnold stroked his chin. Why not invite them for dinner at our manor? And no thank you. I'm sure they aren't used to noble customs. Luke answered. It was already hard enough for him and Norn to maintain their manners at the table last night. Norn's mother wasn't of noble birth and hadn't come into contact with any nobles her entire life, so she had no idea how everything worked. I see. Well, then tell them my father said that they are welcome any time. Arnold leaned out of the window. Lauran silently looked at him. What's he thinking about? Just last night he looked like a demon who had no queries murdering a person. His tone, expressions, and body language were all dangerous. Lauran had never feared someone so much before in her life up until then. She had thoughts of what he'd do to her the next day. She shouted and hurled insults at him after all. It was something no servant should do in front of their lord. What could have been worse was Victoria's reaction if she heard of it. Although Victoria didn't openly show it, Lauran could tell that she was even more dangerous than Arnold. It was a kind of feeling she had whenever she interacted with Victoria. Of course, since Victoria was her superior, she had to act proper. Since I will be Luke's maid from now on, I don't need to follow her orders anymore. Victoria would basically be beneath her. Lauran would be the personal maid of the next patriarch, so her authority in the household would be equal to Sebastian. I'm looking forward to it. Lauran hid the smile on her face as she looked outside how they sped by the buildings and the people on the streets of Laukinga. Chapter 7. The vast city of Laukinga is home to humans ruled by Duke Marcus von Berkley, the great general of the spear arts. It is located west from the Empire of Yulia and was located beneath a mountain. This duchy wasn't built near a mountain by accident, as the forest surrounding the mountain has medicinal plants, which is of great importance to the people of Laukinga's temple and its success. With its suburban houses with elmwood rooftops, walls, and variety of culinary delight. To those from the surrounding land, Laukinga has a mythical atmosphere. The main attraction is the Adventurer Guild, which was built 100 years ago and designed by dwarves. Laukinga has a flourishing economy, which is mainly supported by armorsmithing, engineering, and herbalism. But their biggest strengths are sophisticated cooking and rare crop farming, which were bought from the surrounding farms. Sugar was also a big trade, though not as much as the aforementioned things. However, Laukinga lacks people skilled in crafting. Dwarves had lived here once, however, they had returned back to their homelands. Laukinga is primarily consisted of humans. The city of Laukinga was one of the most prosperous cities on the continent. It could even compare to the imperial capital city, Estir, located in the Empire of Yulia. Although the Duke is the sole lord of this city, he has vassals who act as his representatives or as a small government. Unlike most cities where the unemployment rates are high, Laukinga offered many opportunities to those with and without education. This was even more reason as to why people should migrate out of their villages to work here. The city had many benefits besides the good employment rates. Its streets are well maintained and crime is kept to a minimum. That was mainly because the ruler was a powerhouse of the empire. Magic schools, massive chains of supermarkets, guilds of various kinds and entertainment areas made up the city of Laukinga. The Adventurer Guild was in the center of the city. It was the first building to be built when this city was first created. The first patriarch had great respect for adventurers, so he wanted them right in this city. During the most delicate of times during war, they could be the ones who protect the people. While the patriarch and his men were off to war, they could protect the city and lessen the casualties. Being a large city, Laukinga had enough wealth to even request SS rank adventurers. They were the national protectors of the world. In Star Fantasy, one could choose your own profession or class. Liam was an adventurer before he became a lord of the city he took over by force. That was before Alex recruited him to her guild. Because the system was so broken, there wasn't a way to rank level cap players. They were given the legendary SSS rank to categorize them. I wonder if there is information about me at the guild. SSS is not a real rank in this world anymore, after all, Arnold thought, and looked up at the Adventurer Guild. They were on their way to the shopping district. The auction house would be located at the very top of the street. There was a street that went both sides that headed for the noble districts. I should make some time to visit the guild. He became an adventurer even before the game had an actual plot to follow. Star Fantasy was originally an RPG-based game before the big update that brought a real story. That meant that he was active even before this city was built. I was stationed in this city for a few in-game years after the Duke requested me to protect the city against another Duke. That was how he learned of Luke's arrival at the manor and the mysterious sword they'd be purchasing today. The sword was rumored to be a semi-star rank. He heard this from his guild master, Alex. At first, the sword was in a relic tomb located far from this nation. One lucky traveler found it and sold it to a traveling merchant. The latter then sold it to an official of the empire from this city. That person was the one in charge of the auction house, Bruce Pinedale. He was one of those guys who bought his way up to the top of the noble circle. He wasn't of noble blood, but his authority was still absolute and ranked higher than most nobles in the empire. The man wasn't really a swordsman, so the sword was basically useless. He also didn't know how to use its abilities. Wouldn't it be more beneficial to sell it for loads of money? The idiot doesn't know what he's giving away. Forget star-ranked artifacts, even semi-star-ranked artifacts were rare in this world. Being a DOP, Arnold had countless star-ranked items on his battleship. Whenever he was low on money when he was solo, he would sell it to the public. Such items fetched astronomical amounts of money. The Sanctity Shield that Alatus used was one such item that his guild sold to the public. The Holy Church in the holy city of Melis bought the shield to gift it to one of their paladins. No one was good enough for the shield, though. However, one day a boy who was sweeping the floors of the church walked up to the shield. It took only one touch for everyone to see that he was worthy of it. It released a brilliant white light and turned into a tattoo on the boy's right hand to make it easier to carry around. When he showed the oracle of goddess Melis, they made him the paladin in charge of protecting the believers of Melis. Alatus was one of the first in the hero party to awaken early, even earlier than Luke. By now, Alatus was in his early 20s. He was already married and had a baby. He was working as the paladin at head church of Melis, which was located in the Holy City. The Holy City was the capital of the Holy Kingdom. It was east of the Yulia Empire. North of the Yulia Empire was the fallen kingdom where Flora, the former princess, was from. Even to this very day, the kingdom was still under war. She must be fighting for her life right now. South of the Yulia Empire was the border which separated the human nations from the other races, meaning it was the territory of the elves, dwarves, and demi-humans. Although there was a border, people were allowed to travel freely. That depended whether you had a criminal record or not. "We're arriving," Lauran looked out of the window and said. Arnold nodded and looked towards Luke. "Luke, remember that you must carry the pride of the Berkley household on your shoulders. Walk proudly and do not embarrass my father." Arnold stood up to go outside. "Yes, big brother," Luke shouted with enthusiasm. Arnold grunted at him. It would be a while before he got used to being called big brother by Luke. He decided to let it pass since Luke wouldn't stop regardless. "Stay here, Lauran. Servants are forbidden from entering," Arnold said as he straightened his tie. Anyone could tell what a perfectionist he was. There wasn't a single speck of dust on his dark blue suit. "Yes," Lauran bowed and headed back inside the carriage. Luke and Arnold strode forth to enter the auction house. "Let's get that sword." "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen." When Arnold and Luke got to their seats, they heard the announcer had already begun with the auction. Although nothing had been sold yet, so they were right on time. It's a relief that we got here in time. Auctions usually took place early in the morning. Some would take place late at night if the occasion allowed it. The plump merchant on the stage was holding a magic item that acted as a mic. It was a small crystal. That's interesting. To make up for the lack of modern technology, This world uses magic to create their very own technology. Things like televisions didn't exist here since this game was supposed to be a fantasy-like experience. Bringing modern world things into the game would ruin the experience. Let us begin the auction. First up is the curtains rolled up. Behind the auctioneer were multiple cages with humans and demi-humans inside it. The slave trade was first on today's schedule. Luke's expression hardened. Shit, please don't go berserk. You'll destroy this entire building. Arnold thought hopefully. He looked back to the stage and his eyes widened. Flora? Arnold almost jumped out of his seat. There, in one of the cages, was a certain girl. She looked to be around Arnold's age. She had purplish hair and eyes. Judging by the collar around her neck, she was a war slave. There were lots of cuts and bruises on her body. Her hair, which was always a vibrant purple, was now full of dirt. Are those aura restraints? Arnold saw that she was handcuffed by a special pair of handcuffs. There was a magical formation around it. Are these people idiots? They must have thought Flora was an aura user since she was so powerful that she was able to fight hundreds of men at once. That was a wrong decision to make. Flora was a powerful swordsman because she worked hard in her training in swordsmanship. Aura didn't play a role at all. Arnold's guess as to why Flora wasn't breaking the handcuffs was because she was too exhausted. The fallen princess had to single-handedly protect the nation her family abandoned after all. She never slept properly ever since the invasion on her kingdom started. Looking at her dazed eyes, Arnold knew that she was near death. Please choose from the lineup of beauties before you. I assure you that they only need a bath and healthy food before they can be made servants. Besides Flora, there were others with the same collars around their necks. Elves, dwarves, catkin, and humans. It was like a variety of feast for the eyes since they were all female. He wanted to meet Flora in a more pleasant way. He had no idea she would be captured alive and brought as far as this place. Be big brother, do you know her? Luke grabbed Arnold's arm. He had noticed Arnold look intently at the girl. She was also staring at him because his gaze was so intense that it was obvious he was looking at her. No, I just find her attractive, Arnold whispered as the announcer took everyone's votes. The elf girls were being asked for the most. It was rare for humans to get a taste of elves, after all. Arnold raised his number flag and shouted. Luke, who saw him get up, looked curiously at him. 200 gold to the girl with purple hair. The entire audience looked towards the source of that shout. What the hell? Is that the Duke's son? The nobles made a ruckus when they saw they were in the same room as Arnold. If anyone could mess up an event, it was him. Are you sure? The auctioneer asked to confirm whether he heard that right. 200 gold wasn't anything to scoff at. It was enough to buy an entire plot of land to build a village. Even the girl raised her head in wonder and looked at him. Wah? Luke's mouth hung open in shock. Must I repeat myself? As you already who I am, you can put the bill on my father's tab. I will sign the document when the auction is over. Arnold said coolly as if the money was nothing. The crowd looked at him silently with their mouths open. What are you waiting for? Send her up here or else. Yes. The auctioneer pulled Flora by her arm and sent her off stage. He told her to go up to the man with the dark blue suit. She walked slowly up the stairs of the audience seats. Everyone gazed at her. When they got a close look at her, she was actually a beauty. It was a shame that she would be defiled by that scum. It seems the first product goes to the heir of the Berkley household. The auctioneer looked back at the audience after wiping his brow. Moving on. This girl is. Flora finally arrived in front of Arnold. She could now see how huge he was. Not only was he fairly muscular, but he was handsome too. He looked at her with eyes looking at an inferior being. State your name, slave. He spoke with authority in his voice. Flora's mouth moved, but only whispers came out. She tried licking the inside of her mouth, but her throat was still too dry. Arnold sighed. He looked at Luke. Give me that juice you bought. Oh, okay. Luke didn't say anything and only gave the pouch with the juice in it. Drink. Arnold gave the drink to Flora. She sucked on the pouch so much that squirting noises sounded. She breathed deeply as she felt the pits of her stomach being blessed with the fluids. My name is Flora Renard. I see. I am the eldest son of the great general of the spear arts, Marcus von Berkley. He pointed at Luke. This is Luke. And nice to meet you, ma'am. Luke bowed. Arnold sighed. Bowing to a slave was already humiliating. Look, I'll take her to the carriage and come back. Sit still, all right? That your brother? Flora spoke when they exited the auction room. Her tone of voice didn't fit her beautiful face. She spoke like a barbarian, hoarse and impolite. It was a very informal way of speaking to one who was your master. But Arnold didn't say anything about it. More or less. He's adopted, technically. I see. No wonder you look nothing alike. Arnold stopped when they arrived in the corridor. Flora looked at him from behind with a confused gaze. Renard is the name of a fallen noble house from this nation. Can't you come up with something better? Arnold looked at Flora. His mouth opened as his words poured out. Princess of the fallen Luthiel bloodline? Chapter 8. How did you? Flora's eyes widened, and she stepped back in shock. If they, the Juilliard theocracy, find out that you are the daughter of the one who signed a contract with a great demon, then you'll be hunted down, Flora Renard. Arnold smirked. He didn't sign the contract. Flora shouted back. The theocracy doesn't see it that way, princess. To them, the moment he didn't reject their offer meant that he was the theocracy's enemy. The Juilliard theocracy were the ones who preached and worshipped the human god, Melis. They were the ones who maintained order in the name of the almighty goddess. In truth, however, they were the most corrupt cult in this world, even more so than the demons. In an attempt to rid this continent of their opponents, such as other religious groups and/or threats to their status quo, they resort to underhanded methods like propaganda. For example, if they suspect that a person or organization was thinking of taking them on, then they do their utmost to slay those individuals. That was what happened to the kingdom where Flora was born. Flora gnashed her teeth. She tried to forget about everything that happened back then, but now the memories came flooding back. Are you going to tell them? She smirked and broke apart her restraints. It wasn't much, but the juice managed to give her some of her energy back. Enough to wring a random brat's neck. That is, my. That was supposed to have restrained your aura. How is it that you're that strong? Arnold said with nonchalance. Flora glared at Arnold. She bent her legs and burst forward. It was speed that wasn't possible for normal humans. She didn't have the air of a warrior around her. Rather, that of a young lady from a well-off family. Appearances could be deceiving. Flora swung her leg at Arnold. It was fast, but not fast enough. Arnold only stepped back after releasing his aura. Dealing with an emaciated girl wasn't that hard. Kaya. Flora was suddenly thrown upside down. It was done in a split second. Arnold flipped her while she was off balance with one leg in the air. She crashed onto the ground head first. Arnold held her arms with an iron grip. She couldn't believe the strength in his hands. She couldn't even escape. You bear the sins of your father, Flora. Her father, Lucius Ashen Luthiel II, was given a choice to make his kingdom the vassal of a nation an undead ruled. The undead was a vampire lord that invaded a city and made it their domain. The great demon who made the offer was one of the vampire lord's subordinates. It was explained in the game that the king didn't accept yet, since he was wavering on if it would benefit his nation. On one hand, the vampire lord could protect his nation. However, there was the worry over losing the trust and connections with other foreign nations. On the other hand, the one who made the offer was of undead origin. That was enough for the theocracy to make a move. The Juilliard theocracy didn't let this chance slip by and used it to destroy the nation. Undead and the people of Goddess Melis don't see eye to eye, do they? And look at you, the only surviving member. Arnold said with a glint of mockery in his eyes. This was the perfect chance for the theocracy to kill your family. They feared all of you. No, you were one of their biggest fears. There had been rumors of a swordmaster going around. You could become even more troublesome if you were the vassal nation of that vampire as well. Flora's eyes were turning moist and her face red. Her teeth made grinding sounds. To think that I would be forced to submit to some guy in fancy clothes. When she looked up, she saw the mocking smile that Arnold was directing at her. That sword master was you, isn't it? Now then, if you want to keep this between us, you will do as I say. This scumbag. Flora shut her mouth. That was actually on her mind. She would have incapacitated Lauran and run away. Good girl. Stay with Lauran for now. Once I get back, I want to have a talk with you, Flora. Luke and I will be busy for a while. We should be done by noon if the auction continues at the same pace. It was 2 hours since they arrived at the auction. It would be 3 hours until noon. Maybe there'll be enough time to visit the store. Lauran thought after looking at her watch. Arnold didn't say anything else and only closed the door after exiting. Good grief. He sighed as the carriage began moving. Let's hope my luck won't let me down. Arnold returned to the room and sat back down. Everyone's eyes were on him and followed his every movement. Where is Miss Flora? Luke asked. She's being taken care of by Lauran. Is that really okay? Luke asked again. Hi, yes. It's fine. She won't run away. I can promise you that. Arnold crossed his leg and chuckled softly. She needs to start with his training immediately. He blackmailed her because that was the only way to get her to agree to do what he says. He couldn't take the risk that this world's Flora would decide to train Luke with her own free will. As a noble of the highest seat in the aristocracy, Arnold could pressure Flora as much as he wanted. Just to be clear, the only reason he bought her was to make her become Luke's master. Nothing else. Arnold looked at Luke. I'm not a romantic kind of guy, so it's impossible for me to get two people together. If anything, Arnold only knew how to make a woman fall in love and break her heart. This was why Olivia was so disgusted by him. Well, they don't need to get together anyway. She only needs to teach him how to fight with a sword. Whatever the hell they do afterwards is none of my business. Hey, Luke. Yes, big brother? Luke blinked innocently as he looked at Arnold. I want you to buy Olivia a gift. Why? You need to make a good impression. This is the most important when meeting a woman, especially on the first date. I want you to give it to her as well. What did she like again? Arnold tried to remember the wiki page he read a long time ago. He was Googling Olivia. Blood crystal, he remembered. When you spot red crystals, I want you to buy that. Oh, okay. Olivia had a hobby of collecting rare gemstones, magic crystals, and diamonds. It was one of the few joys in her life as royalty. As she was the princess of an entire empire, there was never the shortage of money to acquire any gem her eyes laid upon. However, the red crystal was a different mineral. To those who knew not of its worth, it was a garbage item. But to Arnold who played the game, it was like a treasure. The crystal could be used for many things. Summoning artifacts, jewelry, mana battery that could be used to fuel an entire city, and so on. Even a small piece of the crystal was priceless. Given its uses and properties, Arnold wasn't surprised. Mineral were also ranked with letters such as F, E, D, C, B, A, S, and SS. This particular crystal was actually a star-ranked mineral. Of course, Arnold wouldn't reveal its secrets. He had a plan to buy a large amount of these crystals to make sure his wealth for the future was secured. You couldn't be a lord of a city and have no money. He also didn't want to rely on his father for money, unless necessary. It would come in handy indeed for a spirit user like Olivia. She could literally carry her spirit beasts around her neck. That was enough reason for her to be overjoyed once she found out its uses. Luke might be able to win her heart with such a gift. The two were walking side by side towards the carriage after exiting the building. Flora stole frequent glances at Arnold's face. How did you know who I was? Flora grabbed his sleeve to make him stop. HM? You think I'd tell you that? Flora glared at him. You're a terrible person. Blackmailing a maiden to do your bidding. You have no choice, Your Highness. Unless you want to see if I was bluffing? I apologize. Flora lowered her head. Whatever it is, I shall do it. Of course, Arnold wouldn't fall for her words. There was the possibility that she would attack him again if he let his guard down. Maybe it was Liam or Arnold. But he wasn't so naive as to take someone's words as truth. How did I end up having this unexpected meeting? Sigh. His only goal today was to get the sword and buy a few other necessary things. He didn't expect to meet the fallen princess here. Flora Patina Lyra Luthiel. She was originally the one who taught the hero the way of the sword. Unlike earlier, the two met when Luke tried adventuring for the first time. She saw how sloppy his skills were and insisted on training him. Throughout their time together, they grew fond of each other and became friends. Flora joined his party when the Emperor announced that Luke had to slay the Demon King. As with most of the women in the story, she fell for Luke immediately. I'll definitely help you fight those guys, Miss Flora. I'll protect you. No woman's heart wouldn't skip a beat if a man declared something like that. That very same day when Luke took down the theocracy for their misdeeds of wrongfully slaughtering thousands, Flora had her first time with him. It was so heartwarming how they fell in love that the fanbase couldn't help but love it. Arnold was one of them. The game was sort of like an Otome game when it came to romance. It was especially so during the school arc. The pain and suffering she went through because of her father's deeds was all blown away in the face of the hero. The things he'd do for strangers was unbelievable. For now, I should let them get close. Arnold thought when they arrived at the carriage. Will I have to call you master now? Flora asked as she squeezed those words out. No, Arnold is fine. Besides, you won't be serving me. Flora didn't get a chance to ask because Arnold opened the carriage door and shoved her inside. What's going on? Lauran was startled when someone opened the door so suddenly. She pinched her nose when Flora was thrown inside the carriage. The intruder smelled like grime and sweat. Fecal matter as well. Lauran, head to the public bathhouse and get this girl clean. Take this and buy her suitable clothes and a meal. Arnold threw a pouch at her. Lauran looked at the young woman. She seemed about 2 years older than her. Faded purple hair, big purple eyes, and a slender but fit body. The most noticeable factor, however, was, but isn't she a slave? Lauran looked at the slave crest on her chest. Is that really all right? Don't question me and get it done. You're leaving me alone? Flora asked. Do you intend to run away? Arnold narrowed his eyes. This is your chance. This girl barely knows martial arts, so you just might be able to escape. He pointed at Lauran. Although, I can't guarantee you won't be thrown with a spell. You probably don't know how slavery works since you're from a nation that abolished it. If I wanted to, I could simply force you to obey me. Whenever you misbehave, I can activate that tattoo on your chest. It will send a shock up your spine. The intensity depends on the level difference between the master and slave. He needn't say anything else. It was already proven that, in her current state, she wouldn't be able to disobey him. It was an unusual color despite being a crystal, but once everyone found out its value, then the demand for it would skyrocket. Sadly, it wasn't that common a mineral. Only one place had an abundant amounts of these crystals. The reason Arnold agreed to his father's order of becoming Whitage's lord was mainly because the mountains near the forest of the city had thousands of kilograms of these crystals. Once he became lord, the land will become his alone. Being a person obsessed with money, Liam wouldn't make their prices cheap. We will now bring out the weapons we have gathered from around the world. The doors on the stage opened. Here it comes. Arnold leaned forward in his seat. His gaze was expectant. Feast your eyes upon these magnificent weapons. This is the weapon of a frost giant. That one over there is a rapier bought from the legendary 9th star powerhouse Margrave Vance, the piercer. What a load of crap. Arnold knew that he was only spouting such lies to get a reaction out of the crowd. The weapons were probably just bought from an unknown blacksmith. Even the appearances of some of them were fake. They probably had craftsmen decorate the weapons. That would motivate the people to buy said weapons. Arnold's gaze wandered on the stage. He could remember what the sword looked like, so it shouldn't have been difficult to spot it. His eyes landed on a rusted sword that was on the waist of one of the guards. Just by looking at its unique double-edged blade, he could tell that it was what he had been looking for. They must have thought that it was worthless, so they gave it to a random guard. Although it was dirty, appearances could be deceiving. How do I get it? Should I give the guard money? That would be suspicious since there was no reason for the son of a great noble, such as him, to care for a sword like that. He could buy anything else. If the guard was quick-witted, he would immediately understand that the sword was worth more than they bargained for. If that was the case, then he'd demand more money for it. Well, I can't just kill him. Damn it. Arnold thought in frustration. The people were already bidding for the weapons brought on stage. Luke glanced at Arnold. Why isn't he buying one? The whole point of coming today was to purchase a sword. Luke already had a sword in mind. It was a sword with a golden hilt, a sharp curved blade, and a gem for decorative purpose. It was the most fitting for a heir compared to the other trash they brought out. Luke hesitated to tell Arnold. He had never really asked for anything before in his life. That much was understandable. He was a meek and shy person after all. You, big brother? Luke pulled Arnold's sleeve. The latter seemed deep in thought as he didn't respond. Luke shut his mouth. Thank you everyone for placing your bids. Please fetch the weapons after the auction, as doing it now would cause a ruckus. Luke sighed in disappointment. All he had to do was ask Arnold to buy the sword for him. Arnold suddenly stood up and walked away. By the looks of it, he was going to the backstage. It wasn't off-limits per se, but that didn't mean just anyone could enter it. Where's he going? Luke could only wonder. Chapter 9. Luke waited in silence on his seat for the next batch of items. The announcer spoke. For the next auction, may I present you the craftsmanship of our empire's finest jewelers. In addition, we have taken into account to prepare raw minerals for those who loves making their own custom jewelry. Women wearing revealing outfits walked from behind the red curtains. There were about a dozen of them. Each of them were pushing a cart with cloth thrown over it. Many gazed in wonder over what was beneath those cloths. I will not be the one to introduce all these wonderful items. Someone else with knowledge in that department will do it. Now then, the auctioneer turned to his left. A young woman walked onto the stage. She was wearing a fancy red party dress with matching heels. They noticed something around her neck. It was a necklace with 5 diamonds sewn beautifully onto the string. Just by looking at it, everyone could tell that it was very expensive. She will be introducing all of us to the jewelry that we have brought today. Do not mind the necklace around her neck. It is but one of her masterpieces. If you wish to buy it, you must pay a hefty price. Ha ha ha. The woman smiled amiably in response to his praise. Now then, please begin. She nodded and gestured for them to pull off the cloth. Many of the audience were astounded by the variety of items before them. Luke did not care for them even as the women explained what each of them was. Instead, he focused his attention on finding the crystals Arnold mentioned. Is that it? He could see small shards of red pieces lying next to the other jewelry. It seemed like nothing at first, but then he saw that they were the crystals Arnold spoke of. There was a single big one amongst the broken pieces lying around it. It was the size of a fist. Luke hurriedly put up his flag. "Excuse me, miss. Someone is ready to place a bid." The auctioneer interrupted the woman as she was busy explaining. She looked displeased at his actions, but remained quiet. "I would like to bid that red rock on the table there." "This?" The announcer pointed towards it. Luke shouted, "Yes, that one. How much is it? Would you reconsider? It is only useful for its radiant color and can be worn for some nights out. I won't recommend buying this for a lady friend. It has no other redeeming qualities." "It doesn't matter." Luke pushed on. His big brother told him to buy it for his future wife, so he had to do it. "Very well. You may have it. I will hand it to you free of charge, boy. When we excavated the other minerals, these just happened to appear among the masses." "Thank you," Luke exclaimed happily. The announcer beckoned over one of the girls who pushed the carts. She nodded and picked up the crystals, with its broken fragments, and threw it in a bag. Although it was called a crystal, it was a very delicate mineral. A minute later, the girl brought it up to Luke. He bowed to thank her before she left. "Okay, I got it." Luke peeked inside the bag and smiled happily. "It's a shame I can't get a sword." He looked back towards the stage. They continued explaining the value of each rock, crystal, and mineral. Nothing really stood out after that. Luke could only wait for Arnold to show up. The auction was where you could get the highest quality weapons on the market. Even famous blacksmiths end up losing business because of the weapons that are available in auctions. If Luke couldn't get one today, then he'd have to wait until the next auction took place. That said, auctions weren't just daily in this world. There was a schedule many had to follow in order to make an auction take place. Forget the items that had to be procured, other things like invitations to the high-ranked people and permit fees were also the troublesome things auction owners had to take into consideration. If the year had been good and preparations had been made accordingly, then an auction could take place every 6 months. All in all, Luke had to go back home empty-handed. Or will he? Here. Arnold suddenly appeared and threw something on Luke's lap. It was a sheathed black sword. "Huh? Why is it so dirty?" Luke picked it up and ran his finger on the blade after taking the sword out. He felt hard mud and grime on his fingers. "Doesn't matter. We finished what we came here to do. Let's go." Arnold was busy wiping his hands with a handkerchief. There was blood on his knuckles. Luke noticed that and pointed. Did something happen?" "Let's just say the person I got it from was very cooperative after a while of persuading," Arnold said with nonchalance. His eyes were still motionless and unwavering. Luke thought it was scary how Arnold could beat someone up without batting an eye, but he didn't voice his thoughts. He stood up and carried the sword and the bag with the crystals inside. Arnold nodded in satisfaction when he looked inside the bag. "We're good to go." The two of them exited the mansion where the auction was held and walked down the stairs. Luke could see even more coaches outside than this morning when they arrived. Countless people dressed in fancy clothing approached the auction house. Although they were fancily dressed, the handsome and smartly dressed Arnold looked much better in the clothing and looks department. His sharp jawline, slanted blue eyes, and his tall nose were the ideal features of an attractive man for modern women such as them. The women couldn't keep their eyes off him. He might have been a tyrant, but that wasn't stopping the women from looking at him as if he were prey. Arnold was oblivious to their stares and only looked forward. He caught the scent of bitch in the air at that moment. A tapping of heels neared them. "Oh my, if it isn't Arnold von Berkley. Fancy meeting you here, da." A female's voice called out to the two of them when they were about to cross the street. "Were you here to make another scene with one of your drinking antics?" Arnold groaned when he saw the young woman who called out to him.
Grace Cialis Lewan,
Arnold said with an unpleasant expression on his face. She smiled as she looked at him. For a split second, her expression changed when she saw Luke before she regained her composure again. That was an odd reaction, thought Arnold. Behind this Grace girl were two very muscular demi-humans. Both were from the Tigerkin tribe, absolute warriors as they were called. Their large frames told all who looked not to mess with them. "Arnold? It's seriously you? Did you come to buy a pleasure slave?" Another voice said in surprise. That said, he was screaming in Arnold's ear. He had blonde hair, golden eyes, and wore an imperial uniform for royalty. He was
Iurius Alpedangorius Eulia.
It was the damned brother of his childhood friend, Olivia Vatilaceria Julia. Arnold thought that the two of them showing up at the same time was not some mere coincidence. How's it going, bro? Jurius put his arm around Arnold's neck. He sighed in his mind. I hate these two the most. Grace was the eldest daughter of a vassal of their family and was Jurius' fiancée. They had been described in the game to be the cannon fodder who foiled all the protagonist's plans. Jurius was the youngest prince of the imperial family. He had 3 older brothers. 2 were in the military while the eldest, crown prince, was handling affairs in another nation. He was also a swordsman like Arnold. His estimated power was measured to be 3rd star. Grace had been married to Jurius for political reasons, so not much love existed between the two. However, both enjoyed taunting others just for the heck of it. Arnold was always their primary target. Being of royalty, Jurius taunted and bullied Arnold since the latter couldn't do anything in retaliation. That had been the case until the present anyway. So, Jurius looked Arnold up and down with a smirk on his face. I hear Olivia hates your guts? What did you do, big man? Perhaps she is too disgusted to be in the company of Sir Arnold. He is known as a womanizer after all. Poor girl, must be scared he'll sink his claws into her maids next. Grace said with a hint of mockery and flicked her drilled golden locks. She flipped her fan and looked at Arnold amusedly. Say, Sir Arnold, I heard you were suspended from the household, and this boy is your replacement. Could that be true? Her revelation shocked the people who crowded around them. Most of the nobles hadn't gone in yet, and decided to stay outside and observe what was about to unfold. Wherever Arnold went, a scene would always ensue. Pray tell, where did you hear that? Arnold asked calmly. His eyes were still looking at Grace. He could care less about the people surrounding them. Only Luke seemed uncomfortable. I might have heard of it from one of your servants, Grace said with a bright smile. Oh, but to think even the Duke doesn't acknowledge his own son. How tragic indeed. Jurius said with fake pity. The people began whispering. All of them expressed their shock over what they heard. The young heir of the Berkley family, one of the great nobles of the empire, losing his position was major news. What does it matter if I lost my position of heir? Arnold didn't bat an eye at their mockery. He was still as expressionless as ever. A vein formed on Grace's temple. One could see how pissed she was that their words didn't have any effect on him. Does that not mean that you are incompetent? The people gasped. That is just how I see it. Hee. A little birdie told me as well that you'll be forced to go to Whiteage City. Surely, the Duke isn't sending his son there on the premise of becoming the Lord? I mean, that place is a dump. Anyone would guess that the Duke disowned Arnold and will send him to become the Lord of a ruined city as a sort of guise. They thought that it was to get rid of him. Well, it does look that way, Arnold thought. Seems like it was the right decision to have Olivia stay at the palace. Who knows what kind of danger she'll be placed in if she were there that day. After all, you have a habit of hitting women whenever your anger flares. Didn't one of the servants resign after she was almost assaulted by you? If this were the original Arnold, he would have silently walked away. Even if he was insulted, and even mocked for his obsession with Olivia, he would remain silent. Opposing royalty was equal to becoming a traitor to this nation. However, a big, strong hand gripped Jurius' entire face and lifted him effortlessly. It was Arnold. Jurius' screams were muffled in Arnold's hand. His face was literally being crushed. You know, I'm not very good at teasing or insulting others. I think it's cowardly of doing so. But taking that crap from a guy like you, with no future for your bloodline or this empire, just irks me to no end. Oh, and one thing. Arnold increased the strength in his hand. Keep Olivia's name out of your mouth, you incest creep. Jurius' eyes widened. Yet another revelation that shocked the crowd. The prince was in love with his own sister. Many looked at him in disgust. In the game, there was one incident where Jurius tried to rape Olivia while she was sleeping. It happened on the night of her and Luke's wedding. Of course, he didn't succeed since her spirit beast Nygard tore him to shreds. Sir J. Jurius, you can't do such a thing to royalty. Grace motioned for one of her tigerkin slaves to apprehend Arnold. The tigerkin took out the large great sword from his back. His muscles bulged. Jurius' face was still being crushed by Arnold's hand. Luke was frozen from what he just saw. Are you trying to intimidate me with your demi-human lovers? That's cute. Arnold smiled widely and looked at one of the tigerkin. He was built like a literal mountain. His biceps were as thick as Al's torso. His large size might have intimidated others, however, his opponent was a 5th-star knight. The demi-human shivered when he saw Arnold's expression. It was one of a demon ready to strike down a lower life form. Arnold's gaze held absolute power, a power that forced its enemies to their knees after tormenting them. Even the surrounding crowd became terrified over his malice. You have grown into such a beautiful woman. Why not become my wife instead? I will make you glad to have been born a woman. You must have heard the rumors, right? That I'm very good in bed. Arnold licked his lips as he stared at Grace. He threw Jurius onto the ground after letting him go. The demi-human was still frozen with fear. What the fuck did you say? Jurius screamed while coughing. Grace's face reddened when she heard his words. That's sexual harassment. I knew you were a scumbag. Go die. She left with unsteady footsteps, dragging her fiancé with her. Jurius didn't forget to leave his one-liner. You'll pay for this, you'll see. Arnold merely chuckled. It was a bad idea to do this in public. He looked around. There were so many eyewitnesses, so there was no way he could deny what happened today. Arnold merely shrugged. Doesn't matter anymore. Who were they? Luke asked when the group left. That guy is the fourth prince. He's Olivia's older brother. Grace is his fiancée. Let's just say we all grew up together, although none of us view each other fondly anymore. Luke was speechless. Arnold had just assaulted a royal. Isn't he worried about the repercussions? The crowd stepped aside when Arnold and Luke left the scene. Arnold acted as if he was taking a stroll in the park. Where's the carriage? I told them to be here by noon. Arnold grumbled as he looked around. Flora, Lauran, and the coachman was nowhere to be seen. Well, let's... When Arnold was about to tell Luke that they had to walk home, he heard someone call out to them. Hey! Arnold nearly cursed. It was Flora. The only difference was that she was now well-groomed and wore stylish clothes. Her hair was bundled up into a messy bun which made her look quite attractive. Arnold noticed that she had a troubled expression on her face when she ran towards them. The sweat on her forehead caused her hair to stick to her face. One could tell that Flora had been running around for quite some time. What are you doing here? Where's Lauran? When I came out of the shop, she was gone. What? Chapter 10. I specifically told her to use the money to buy you clothes. I didn't order her to go anywhere else. So where did you see her before she vanished? Arnold asked calmly. His attitude contrasted how Flora was acting. Heir, Flora tried to remember. There was a large fountain in the center of the area. I think it was called the plaza. The plaza was in the middle of the city. Whichever road she took, well, they still had to find out. The northern road headed to the noble district. The southern road led to the slums. The western road led to the entertainment district. Lastly, the eastern road led to the commoner district. The plaza was where many of the city's stores were located. Unlike the shopping district, which had markets that sold food, at the plaza were stores for clothing, jewelry, tailors, and so on. Did she mention anything about stopping by another location? Flora shook her head at Arnold's question. All I remember is that when I left the store, she was gone. Where's that damn coachman then? Arnold asked in frustration. Lauran was a valuable acquaintance. He couldn't allow her to fall into danger. He was gone as well. What was strange was that the carriage was still there. But there were some shady guys standing outside the stores. All of them wore a red ribbon around their right arms. When I exited the store, they tried to attack me. I defeated them and asked if they saw where she went, but they wouldn't tell me anything, so I handed them over to the city patrols who passed by. Arnold stopped walking when he heard that. Red ribbons. He suddenly remembered who they were. Only one gang wore red ribbons to signify their identity. The Felix brothers gang. It was the gang of the three brothers. The eldest was the leader while the other two were his right-hand men. Don't tell me they were there for Lauran. Arnold had a bad feeling. Her father's store in the commoner district. My guess is that she went there and is being followed by them. Arnold concluded. It was the place she'd most likely head to. As Lauran was Arnold's slave until recently, the boss couldn't make a move on her. However, since she was now free, he could do what he wanted to her and her family. It might have looked like Arnold completely abandoned her from the decision he made. However, that wasn't the case at all. Staying with Luke was better than staying by Arnold's side. He was probably too optimistic thinking that Flora could protect Lauran. But still, even in her current state, she was as strong as an average knight. What is he going to do with her? Although he wasn't certain where, chances were that the boss took Lauran to one of his hideouts. That being the case, Arnold had no idea where to look. Look, I need you to head back. Why? Miss Lauran is in danger. What can you do? Arnold's question caused Luke to go silent. He lowered his head. He was powerless as he was now. Although he won in his fight against Arnold yesterday, That was merely because his emotions went rampant, which released his power. As Arnold saw it, that strength didn't belong to Luke. Yet, as he was now, he couldn't compete with gangsters who slaughter for fun. You may be the strongest in your village, however, this is a city that many renowned warriors call home. You aren't strong enough to face them.
But
Arnold glared at Luke, who was still retorting. Luke cowered at his glare. I have no qualms knocking you out if you keep refusing. Now, give me the sword. Arnold pointed at the sword by Luke's waist. Luke handed it to him silently. If anyone asks why I didn't come with you, then say I went to a brothel or something. Yes. Luke obediently nodded his head. He turned around and began walking away. Is this okay? Letting me come with? Flora, who had watched them silently until now, spoke up. I need a meat shield in case the enemies overwhelm me. Flora pouted. Take this. Arnold threw the sword at Flora. Huh? This is... Flora looked at the sword blankly.
what?
This is the sword that guard took from me. I've been using it since my previous weapon broke. Flora swung the sword to see if it had the same feel as the last time she used it. It did. So that explains why that low-ranking soldier had it. He must have been the one who brought Flora here as a slave, after she collapsed due to exhaustion from fighting hundreds of knights. Did you travel all the way here on your own before you became a slave? Arnold asked as they walked. Yeah. After the enemies infiltrated the castle, I had nowhere to go, so I just ran. I can remember being chased by summoned angels. Summoned angels? It must have been the theocracy after all, Arnold thought. To be able to summon angels using divine crystals, one must have the blessing of a god. Arnold concluded that they must have sent one of the high priests to deal with Flora. That alone proved how much of a threat Flora actually was to them. She was a future master swordsman, after all. What level were the angels? About level 35, I think. Those things were almost as strong as the average Imperial Knight. As expected, they really sent one of the members of the theocracy to capture Flora. The theocracy were a group of people who delivered divine judgment in the name of Goddess Melis. They created a group who could deliver justice in their name. They were called the Warriors of the Word of God. There were 10 of them in total. They demonstrated the highest authority of the Holy Empire. One side of the Holy Empire was comprised of the theocracy, while the other was ruled by the current emperor. Some agreed to the decision to make priests implement a system where they ruled while others did not. Those of the latter stuck to the old tradition of being ruled by a monarch. Namely, the first emperor. The supreme pontiff and the emperor decided that, in order to come to an agreement, they must coexist. The northern side was comprised of the government ruled by priests, while the southern side was the Holy Empire. The nation was divided as such hundreds of years ago. The ones who the theocracy used to implement the judgment of God are the aforementioned warriors of the Word of God. It wasn't unusual for such individuals to be level 50 or higher. The leader was said to be at the level of an 8-star powerhouse, level 65 or higher. Flora, what level are you? This was the first time Arnold had asked someone that question. He wasn't sure if levels for humanoids existed in this world as it did in the game. You even want to know my level? Flora huffed. Is it taboo to ask someone that? Have you been living under a rock? Flora answered regardless. I'm level 37. So she's one of the stronger ones in this world. Levels didn't necessarily convey how strong an individual was. It all came down to stats. Original Arnold was at least below level 30 when he was introduced. But his stats were much higher than the average person. That was because his stats were unbalanced in the game. His AP, aura power, was estimated to be extremely high, which explained why he was so powerful. Arnold wasn't sure how high Luke or Lauran's levels were. He had to first find an appraisal item that could measure a person's power. Such items weren't on the market. Asking someone their level is similar to sharing your personal information. You must never even share your skills. Right. If you were to PvP someone after telling them, then you'd be at a disadvantage. Arnold no. Liam thought to himself as he remembered how one of his junior guild mates once complained about being PvP'd by a person he considered his friends, only to lose a great amounts of EXP and items after losing the battle. Of course, the fault lay with the guild mate since he gave out information about his in-game character. Do you know how high-leveled this greater demon was who visited your father to make your kingdom a vassal? Flora thought for a moment. The mages of the palace said that he was at least level 70 or above. Arnold shivered. What the hell? Someone like that can't be that unnoticeable, right? Where has this greater demon come from? He had heard from his clan mates that there was a city ruled by an undead who had subordinates that equaled or surpassed 7th-star players. Hearing the demon's level, he didn't find it so ridiculous anymore. So you only know of it making contact with us, but not its origins? Well, I guess you're not omniscient with your connections. There is a big city to the south of the kingdom, so it lies between this empire and your kingdom. Flora nodded. It is being ruled by a vampire lord. Vampire lord. It was a title given to a species that had reached the peak of their race. As seen with dragon lords, orc lords, goblin lords, etc., she is estimated to be level 100. Some believe she is a descendant of the legends that once roamed these lands. Flora said gravely. Even thinking about that monster was giving her the chills. Even though the city she took over was an important neighbor before, none of the nations could do anything against that monster. She wasn't the only one who was powerful, her subordinates were as well. So she's a level cap NPC, Arnold said in a mutter. There was a possibility that she was a player. That was because it was extremely hard to max out your characters, even for players. Once you hit level 80, then your progress stalls immensely. Even using real money wouldn't get you that far. You had to grind and put in the effort. Even the powerhouses of this empire weren't even level 80 yet. That was why Arnold concluded that it was highly likely that she was a player. I never really went into detail to ask about the vampire lord, but this is okay too. There might come a time when I have to interact with her to know for certain if she is a player. What was that? Flora found the way his behavior changed odd. He was muttering to himself while staring into empty space. Nothing. Oh, right. Since you haven't recovered yet, take this. I need you to help me fight when the chance arises. Arnold handed a potion to her. It was an ordinary healing potion, so the effect shouldn't be that potent. Arnold had considered making the potions from the game. However, he needed the right materials before making said potion. The materials weren't rare, but getting them would be difficult even for him. Not to mention he needed to travel vast distances as well. Flora drank the potion and felt her body being re-energized. Little by little her strength returned. You sure I can use this? You're not scared I might cut you down? Flora smirked. As arrogant as ever, Your Highness. Arnold mocked before jumping onto a nearby building's roof. Flora soon followed. The two of them began jumping from rooftop to rooftop. Part 2. Earlier that day, Lauran stealthily left the store as Flora was busy trying on new clothes. Lauran told the coachman to drop Flora off at the auction house after she was done with buying the clothes. Although Arnold ordered her to take Flora shopping, he didn't say anything about babysitting her. Plus, Flora was still under the detainment of the slavery collar, so there wasn't a worry of her running away without repercussions. I have to go see how they're doing. My family. She hadn't visited her parents in a while. She was only allowed to visit them twice a month. She broke into a run when she took the eastern street of the plaza. The people looked at her oddly since she was wearing a maid uniform but wasn't in the presence of her master. Lauran didn't concern herself with their gazes and continued running towards a certain location. The store her parents started when they moved to this city. Although it wasn't doing very well these past few years. The whole reason Lauran became a slave had to do with that incident that happened 2 years ago. She had willingly sold herself in order to get money so her parents could pay off a certain amount of their debt. Maybe it was out of spite or just because he was interested in her, but the first one to buy her was Arnold. After the incident with the gang, they had officially become a black store. Black stores referred to the stores who had relied on the money of loan sharks and those from the underground. Getting involved with them was believed to bring lots of trouble. Her father was once a friend of the leader of the gang. He asked the man for money to save the store. However, that was a grave mistake. The banks didn't really bother with supporting a commoner's business, so her father had no choice in the end. The interest on the loan had taken a sudden 10% rise the very next month. It increases by 1% each month. They were told to either give the store to the gang or pay the money. Lauran's parents hadn't been doing very well, so she had been working longer shifts at the manor to help them pay the debt they owe. Hence why she couldn't visit them so often. Her father was in a wheelchair, so he couldn't carry out any physical labor. Her little brother was too young to work. That left her mother as the sole family member fit to take care of the store. Then again, it was hard getting customers. Lauran looked at the money in her hands as she ran. It wasn't nearly as much as the money they owed, but it was at least something. There has to be a way to settle this debt instead of giving all of their money to that bastard every month. Lauran suddenly thought of Luke, the next Duke of the Berkley family and Lord of this duchy. To her, he seemed like the average pushover brat who knew nothing about the outside world. Maybe I should seduce him and ask him for a raise. Lauran was shocked by her own thoughts. I can't do that. That sounds so wrong. Then again, it was one of her options to help her parents. If she could at least become the mistress of the next Duke, then her problem would be solved. She could even ask Luke to get rid of the gang. Looking at the kind of person he was, She thought it might be possible. However, what if Arnold found out about her plan? That was why it was risky to even think about going through with that plan. She had similar thoughts with Jack before Luke arrived. However, he was much too young to have a mistress and wasn't expected to become the Duke at all. That left Arnold. However, she knew that he would never help her unless there was something in it for him. Lauran felt like she was in a dilemma. Is someone behind me after all? Lauran muttered when she came to an abrupt stop when she reached the street where her parents lived. It was a fairly safe neighborhood. She had felt this presence ever since she left the store. Being capable of manipulating mana, she could detect faint movements of footsteps behind her. She had left residual mana to see if she was right. Who is it? She continued walking and pretended she didn't sense them. She fished out a wand from her maid uniform's pocket and stealthily cast a spell. The street was oddly quiet despite the fact that it was broad daylight. Had the residents retreated inside their houses? If so, for what purpose? Lauran continued casting as the footsteps got closer. She was casting a third-rank magic spell. In the world of Star Fantasy, items, characters, monsters, magic, divinity, and so on are all classified by different rankings. For weapons and items, they are ranked by letters from F until SS, followed by semi-star and star rank. Monsters and residents of this world are ranked by levels, level 100 being the cap for all beings. All forms of magic, however, are classified by rank. It wasn't common for the average person to be able to cast fourth-rank magic unless they were extremely talented. Such people were sought after in this world. There are probably less than a few thousand people, that includes the powerhouses on the continent, who are capable of using magic above rank 4. Even fewer could cast 6th-rank magic. Anything past that meant someone was classified as a demigod. Only the legends of the past were known to be that powerful in magic. Lauran didn't know why she was capable of casting such magic. She was never the kind of person who had an interest in fighting, but given the situation at the moment, she was grateful. Come out. Otherwise, I will have your heads. Lauran finally activated her spell. Well, it seems we've been found out, boys. A hoarse, deep voice came from the shadows. A 2M tall man with a bald head that had a snake tattoo on the right side of his face stood in front of Lauran. Lauran lost focus, which caused her spell to vanish. The man before her was the youngest brother of the leader of the Felix gang, Tobias, the Shredder.